It's something both my dad and I do where we seemingly skip around in space-time. I've even got eyewitness confirmation of one of these events. The earliest I was made aware of this phenomenon was a story Dad told of when he and Mom were first dating. They lived in different parts of town, and he could pretty much only go one way, from hers to his. After dropping her off one day and heading his usual way home, he's suddenly in a different part of town, heading the opposite direction. All my life, my dad had a habit of disappearing. And not in the I'm going out for smokes kind of way, but in the you can walk past the chair he's in 4 times and only see him once kind of way. It's the more concrete examples that blow my mind. One time, I was busy cleaning my room when I suddenly heard Dad screaming frantically. He had apparently been looking for me for 30 minutes, screaming and yelling the whole time, freaking out. At one point, he was even in my room. We would have both been standing in the centre of my room. Neither of us could see or hear the other. Same week, I'm laying in bed, actively listening to the TV show my parents are watching downstairs. Without a word, Mom gets in her car and leaves. She comes back with takeout and says she got me whatever because I wouldn't answer her. She even told me she turned the TV all the way down, thinking I couldn't hear her. From my perspective, that never happened. The volume never changed. Recently, in the apartment my girlfriend and I rented together, she witnessed my shifting. I was washing dishes when she pulled into the driveway. I waited a minute before going to the door to greet her, except she wasn't there. Assuming she must still be in her car, I left the door cracked and went back to finish the dishes. No sooner than I had turned around, she was coming in the door behind me. I asked her about what happened, what she saw, and she told me she saw the front door come out while she was backing into the driveway, not after. It's like I perceive time as linear, but I don't always experience it as such. It also seems to happen more frequently as I get older. The other night, I let my dogs out in the backyard so they could run and use the restroom. Like an hour later, they're barking like crazy. My dogs normally bark, but generally only if there's a person or another dog. And even then, the barking they were doing the other night sounded really aggressive, like they were fighting something or were scared. I went to let them in as I didn't want them to wake my mom, who was sleeping upstairs. I didn't really think anything of it until tonight at dinner, when my mom told me she had been awoken by the dogs. She told me that she went to the window that looks out over the backyard to hush the dogs, when she saw something in our backyard. She described it as having an Afghan wolfhound-like body, but with shaved hair, and moving like a sloth, but faster. On a whim, I showed her a picture of the old Creepypasta the rake, and she agreed that that's what it looked like if it had blonde fur. The sloth movements also reminded me of a story I'd heard about a Wendigo and how they had puppet-like movements. She told me that after the dog started to growl at it, the thing awkwardly maneuvered its body up the back fence into the park behind our house, up a few houses to the right, where another neighbour with dogs was, before retracting and going to the empty plot directly to the right of us, and seemingly disappearing. A few other important pieces of information that might help. I live in an area that is situated just outside the town, but it has a pretty dense forest surrounding it that is fenced off due to being military property. The plot next to us is a drain area that's covered in thick, tall grass. This also isn't the first time that we've seen something strange in our neighbourhood. Family and guests always say they see several shadow figures along the street, and my sister and I once saw a very weird deer at the park. To go more in depth about the deer, it was young without antlers and was very light coloured. My sister and I went to the park where it seemed like it had gotten stuck and couldn't leave. The park is fenced in since it belongs to the school. Once we entered, the deer started running straight at us, but then changed its mind and left the park like it hadn't been unable to moments prior. We watched it for a little while just to make sure it didn't get hit before walking up the hill to our house, and it started following us again. It could be nothing. It's just weird behavior for the deer in this area, who will usually run away the second you even turn towards them. It was also strange that such a young looking deer was by itself, when usually the mothers can be found with them. I'm not saying it was a not deer or anything, but my sister and I had joked about it at the moment as we're both avid cryptid fans. That all happened like a month ago, and the only reason I bring it up now is because its appearance at night would look a lot like the creature my mother had described. Ever since I was a small child, I've always dealt with paranormal experiences. It seems like no matter where I move, there's always paranormal shit waiting to happen. Whether it be shadows in the corner of my eye or things flying off shelves for absolutely no reason. As previously mentioned, I had experiences that range from items flying off counters or moving in front of me, all the way to hearing my name called by 3 different voices in the middle of the night while I was home alone. Voices that I've never heard in my life. I recently moved in with family members due to COVID. Almost immediately after I moved in, all types of different occurrences began happening in this house. As silly as this sounds, every time I speak of these ghosts or whatever they are, technology all around me begins to malfunction. And only when I speak of them. For example, my TV and computer monitors would freeze, or just straight up shut off by themselves. They're both no older than a year each. I tried to test the phenomenon by chatting with a good friend on the phone. We were chatting for 50 or so minutes. We were chatting about family. No problems whatsoever. Once we hit the 1 hour mark on the call, I started chatting with him about activity I've witnessed in the past. Sure enough, the call dropped. Dropped, not ended. I called back, continued on with my story. Sure enough again, the call dropped again. This process happened approximately 11 or 12 more times. After the last time, I left my room to go ask if any of my family members were experiencing technology errors. Apparently, I was the only one. When I mentioned I was telling a good friend paranormal experiences I've had in the past, my mum went and put an open Bible in my room. After that, my calls stopped dropping. Just for the record, I normally have amazing internet and phone service. For the next 3 days while the Bible was in my room, the living room just outside my bedroom had things fly off shelves and counters almost daily, even when I was home alone. When I removed the Bible after 3 days, the activity seemed to calm down. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to see things calm down, but there's rooms in my house that my dog absolutely refuses to enter. I've always assumed maybe I'm just bad luck, or perhaps maybe someone that disliked me passed away. But to this day, I have no idea. I just keep telling myself quarantine might just be taking a mental toll on me, but my family has witnessed things falling too. There's so much more I'd like to type, but at this point, my iPhone is lagging so bad it's taking 2 seconds for every letter typed. If anyone has any opinions or advice, I'll be happy to reply to everyone. This is the second time it's happened in the last 6 months or so. About an hour ago, 12:30 at night, I was in bed and my cat, who almost always insists on sleeping at the foot of my bed, woke me up amongst the midst of severe nightmares I was trapped in. I don't usually have an issue waking up when I have a bad dream, but 2 times, I haven't been able to wake up on my own. I don't know what it could be. It started as an awful dream, pulling someone away from jumping off a building, trying to kill themselves. And when I eventually woke up, I would immediately fall asleep again and on to the next nightmare. I didn't have the strength to wake myself up fully, but I could feel my heart racing as each one was progressively getting worse and worse, to the point I was dreaming about running and hiding from something, with people I'd never met before, and hearing footsteps closing in and sudden screaming. Then I could hear my cat Jones meowing repeatedly, loud enough it shook me out of the nightmare, and he wouldn't stop till I hugged him for a while. He calmed down, but suddenly stood up, looked across the room, and stared at nothing for a moment, and then looked at the other side and started again. I haven't been able to sleep since, but Jones has calmed down and fallen asleep, so whatever it was, is gone now. Earlier this year, my friend's sister passed away. I've known the sister for a long time and found her friendly, outgoing, and charismatic. She always stood up for herself, but in a way that didn't make you feel like she was attacking you. So about a month ago, my friend had a girls' night and we hung out at her mother's house. As the evening wore on, they insisted that I stay the night. They offered me the sister's room, but said if I felt off about it, I could sleep elsewhere. I said that the sister and I always got along fine. She didn't scare me, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind. Sometime during the night, I woke up when I felt the room temperature drop, and I got chilled. Well, I'm in my 50s, and thanks to menopause, it has to be really cold for me to get chilled. Then I felt a cold presence next to the bed, and I knew it was the sister. I heard my friend from the other room ask if I was okay, and I told her that her sister was in the room. She told me to tell her to go away. I said that this was her room and she had every right to stay, and that I didn't mind sharing. Then I felt her lay down in the bed next to me. It took a while for the chill to dissipate, but I eventually fell back asleep. The next morning, I told my friend and her mother what happened. My friend said she doesn't remember that conversation with me, and that I might have dreamt it. Her mother, on the other hand, believed it, and was very happy that her baby girl had joined us for the girls' night. My mom was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 1999. She was stage 4, and doctors didn't give her much hope to live past 3 to 6 months. They started her on an aggressive form of treatment, including Rituxan. She responded well and went into remission in December 2000. About 3 months later, she got a really bad sore throat and relapsed. The cancer was back and more aggressive than ever. Fast forward to October 2001. My mom didn't come to work at our shop one day and wouldn't answer the house phone. I went to see her after work and the door was locked. She finally came to the door and was confused and dizzy. I rushed her to the hospital where we were told her cancer had broken the blood-brain barrier. She was admitted and I was told she maybe had a few weeks to live. She had lost her ability to speak to me, but she knew who I was. They tried an experimental treatment and it worked for a few days, and she was speaking and very aware of her surroundings and me. I knew it was going to be over soon, and she even said, "I've raised you right, and it's time for me to go soon." My dad had passed a few months before suddenly, and it was the worst year of my life. I came to see her the next day and could hear her talking in German, and thought one of her friends was visiting. I came into the room and no one was there. I asked her, "Who are you talking to?" She said Papa and started giggling. I said, "Yeah, okay," and sat with her. The next day, she had a massive seizure and almost bit her tongue off. They had to place a stint in her mouth, then place her under anesthesia to stop the seizures. She passed at 5 a.m. on November 2nd, 2001. I was comforted by the excellent nurses in the hospice and told them she must have been losing it because she was talking to herself. The nurses looked at each other and said she did it all the time. She would have full-blown conversations with someone for hours on end. They asked her who she was talking to and she said, her dad, and that he'd be seeing her soon. Problem is, her dad was killed in World War II, Holland, on November 1st, 1944. The nurses also told me They thought they heard a man's voice in her room at times, but when they entered, no one was there and she had a huge smile on her face. I miss her dearly, but I know she's in a better place, free of that misery. I really appreciate all the feedback I got. So much of it was heartfelt, positive, and warm. I always get a bit melancholy around the time of her death anniversary. Writing this story makes me feel a bit better about the whole thing, and I hope it helps others cope during the holidays a little bit better. Now to what I experienced. I think it was maybe around 3 years ago. I remember it was winter because it was really cold and snowy outside. I was left alone in my family's cabin while we others went Christmas shopping for food and last minute packages for some friends or something. I don't really remember why they went out, but that's not important. My point is, I was all alone in our cabin, playing some games on my phone while listening to some music on the radio in my room, on the first floor of the cabin. I remember that I suddenly got cold and went to get a blanket that was on our sofa. Just as I was about to get up and grab the blanket, I saw some kind of shadow in my side vision. I didn't really care that much because I thought that maybe it was just my imagination playing a trick on me, because I didn't really like being alone in general, and especially not in a cabin on a mountain in the middle of winter. I got the blanket and went back to my room to play some more games. About 1 hour passed, and I'd forgotten about all the strange shadow, but when I saw it again, this time it stayed in my side vision for about 3 to 5 seconds before it went away again. I got a little creeped out about it since I was the only one in the cabin at the moment. Therefore, I decided to lock the room to my door. Right after I locked the door to my room, I heard some kind of crying upstairs on the second floor of the cabin. At first, I thought it was my little sister who was about 3 years old at the time. She used to cry a lot, and I asked out loud, "What's wrong? Did you hurt yourself?" I heard her answer, "Yes. I feel while playing with my dolls. Can you come upstairs and help me?" I unlocked my door and headed towards the stairs when it finally hit me. I was alone in the cabin, so whatever the fuck was upstairs could not be my little sister. I sprinted out of the cabin wearing only a t-shirt and my dad's slippers, and it was freezing cold outside. I stopped running about 150 meters away from the cabin and looked at it from a distance. In one of the windows on the second floor, I could see a shadow just standing still, and I got the feeling it was staring at me, even though I could not make out any eyes. I stood there outside of my family's cabin in the freezing cold for about 30 minutes and cried until my family finally arrived. My mum and dad asked me what was wrong, but I didn't want them to think I was crazy, so I just made up a story. I don't remember what I told them, but they seemed concerned about me. One thing I remember is that I talked my mom and dad into driving me to my grandparents' cabin because I refused to enter the cabin. Ever since that day, I refuse to join my family when they go to our family cabin. It's really hard to explain, but the feeling I got that day in the cabin can only be described as not wanting, like someone or something wanted to harm me, and I have nightmares about the shadow figure thing, even today. It's haunting my dreams. So this took place at my cousin's old house when I was 7 and my cousin was 6. My whole family was there and they were all outside getting drunk, so no one was really paying attention to all the kids. There were 5 kids there at the time. My cousin and I thought it would be fun to try on her old Halloween costumes, so we started running upstairs, and when we got to the 3rd step, we bumped into something and we were thrown down the stairs. It literally felt like we bumped into a pole and then got pushed off the stairs. So we were laying on the ground, hurt, trying to process what just happened. But we thought we just slipped or something. So we stood up and looked towards the stairs and saw a ghost standing on the 3rd step. The ghost was standing very formally and didn't move a muscle. I don't remember much except that the ghost was dressed as a pilot, And the most vivid part I remember is his shoes were extremely shiny. Me and my cousin screamed like we were getting murdered, and my other cousin, Jay, 11 at the time, rushed from the kitchen and asked what was going on. We couldn't word a mouth. We were terrified. Jay looked up at the stairs and saw the ghost and screamed. My mother ran to us to see what was going on, so we explained what we saw, and she thought we were just messing around and went back outside. 3 years later, I was talking about it with my two cousins who also saw what I saw, and they said that they didn't remember that at all. I was confused and terrified because I knew that it actually happened, and I was curious as to why they didn't remember what happened. 3 days later, I was still staying at my cousin's house, and I saw the ghost in the kitchen, but my cousin Jay didn't see him, so I brushed it off and we went back to her room. That was the last time I saw him. Last year, I was talking to my cousin M, Jay's sister, and she said that her great uncle was a pilot and died when I was about 4, and we think that's who I saw. That experience still terrifies me to this day, and every time I tell someone, they don't believe me. In April 2020, my partner and I sadly lost a son at 17 weeks gestation. I had an infection in my uterus, which was undetected, and after several days in hospital with some worrying symptoms, I went into premature labour. I was also septic, so after delivering our boy, I was very unwell. To say it was tragic and traumatic would be an understatement. We named him, and for the purposes of this post, we'll call him H. At the time, my older son A was 2.5 years old, too young to really understand anything except that Mummy was sick in hospital. We haven't purposefully not told him about H. We will in time, but there was no reason to confuse him at such a young age. We don't talk a lot about H at home. H is not a name that is familiar to our older son for any reason. Around July this year, I was driving A to a Saturday morning activity when he said, "Mummy, you should meet my friend H. He's here in the car with us," and pointed to the ceiling of the car. I didn't want to overreact or ask too much in case he felt the need to make things up, so I simply said, "That's good, eh? Is he a nice friend?" And he said yes. I told my partner, and we both had the same reaction. Weird coincidence, but also, kids have imaginary friends often. Not a big deal. Next day, A told my partner that H is here when they were playing in our lounge room. My partner asked, "Oh, okay, where is he now?" And A pointed in the air to the corner of the room, above where we kept H's ashes on top of our bookshelf, and then said, "He's like an astronaut, he can float in space." A few days later, when my partner took A off to childcare, I gave A kiss and hug, as I always do at the front door. A then turned to his left and enthusiastically said, "Bye H, I'm off to school," before running out the door. By now, my partner and I are just looking at each other in amazement. Over the next few weeks, this happened several more times. Sometimes A told us that H is asleep, so would stay in the car if we arrived at our destination. A also told me that H was in hospital, not an astronaut anymore. This time freaked me out a little as, of course, the only time we could hold H was in hospital. Our only memories of him physically were in that setting, but mostly these visitations felt special and a bit magical. The final time H visited, that we know of, occurred in the car again, just A and I. He told me, "H is here with us, Mummy," and curiosity got the better of me. I asked, "A, is H a man or a little boy like you?" And he said to me, with a tone like I really should know this already, "No, Mummy, H is just a little baby. Sometimes I can hold him." And he cradled his arms like he was holding a small baby. That was absolutely an oh shit, but also a wow moment. I was raised agnostic atheist, so it's all a bit overwhelming to ponder on too much. But we have decided it was H just letting us know he's okay, and with us still, somehow. A few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant again. I like to think H was here with us through the early weeks, and is still with us still, always a special part of our family. I do believe young children can see things we can't explain. I'm so glad A had this chance, though we most likely won't remember it. I'll just get to it. This happened a few months ago. My folks wanted to renovate my old room I used to sleep in when I lived with them. I went to help them out during the weekend with the renewal, and all went smoothly. We threw away the old beds and furniture and gave them a fresh coat of paint. Since we threw out the old bed, I had to sleep in a different room. My mom offered for me to sleep on the couch, but I refused since it's very uncomfortable and I'm quite a large guy, so I decided I'll sleep downstairs. For context, the house has 2 stories. A ground floor with a guest bedroom, used to be my grandmother's bedroom, but she passed away. And a second floor where we basically used to live overall. Very rarely do we ever go to the ground floor. The floors are connected by stairs which are on the outside. There are no stairs on the inside. So I said goodnight and went down to the guest bedroom. I grabbed a snack and put on a TV series to watch. This goes on from about 10 p.m. till 1:15 to 1:30 a.m. when I decide to sleep. I start drifting off to sleep when I suddenly hear a knock on the window. 3 knocks, like someone is asking if anyone's there. The knocking was very faint, however, so I thought that it may have just been normal house noises, or just the wind since I was sleeping on an open window. About 1 to 2 minutes passed after the first knocking, and it goes again. Knock, knock, knock. I start getting a little anxious at this point, so I stand up and listen. A couple of minutes after the knocking, there's this inhuman growl from outside. It sounds like it's coming from the edges of the backyard. Then another couple of moments of silence, and then it knocks again. Now at this point, I'm starting to shit bricks, and this happening repeatedly, it knocks then growls on the other side of the backyard. So I text my girlfriend to try and share this with someone so I get some stress off me at least. She tells me to record it. I made 4 recordings, and from my phone, I couldn't hear anything. The sound stopped after about 30 to 40 minutes. It wasn't easily falling asleep after that. The next day, I woke up to see if I could actually hear anything in the recordings. I enhanced one of them and caught the growling. This happened maybe 2 years ago and was without a doubt the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. Me and my at the time roommate were just finished working out. It was about 8 p.m. and the sun had already gone down. After walking out of the gym, we decided to do a couple laps at the nearby stadium before we went home. Nothing obscure happens on the way there, but once the stadium comes within view, we realise the floodlights are turned off. This didn't deter us, as we were pretty certain we could run in the dark either way. We went to the bottom row of seats to leave our gym bags there. As we're placing our bags, we started hearing it. It was whistling, coming from the top rows right above us. Not only was the very fact that someone was sitting in the dark the entire time unnerving, but the very whistling itself was bone-chilling. I don't know if I can explain it properly like this, but it was 3 low-pitched whistles, then 1 higher pitch, then 1 lower pitched, and then it would repeat. It sounded like whatever was making it wanted us to come to it. We were thoroughly unnerved, so we whispered to each other to grab the bags and then jog to the other side of the stadium and get out. We took our bags and started jogging, and almost immediately afterwards, the whistling stopped. As I could hear nothing else but our feet stomping on the ground and heavy breathing, I just figured it had grown bored and went away. Just then, I started hearing something. I could hear a 3rd set of feet running behind us. My stomach dropped as I realised whatever that was running towards us. Our adrenaline kicked in and we started booking it to the exit. As we were getting closer to the exit, I could hear it again, whistling, but this time 10 feet away from me. We made it past the exit and out on the streets, and we didn't quit running till another block down. We stopped to catch our breaths, and whatever was chasing us had quit at the stadium exit. Only me and my roommate know about this story. We've never really talked about it. That whistling is still the most disturbing thing I've ever heard in my life. Today, I, 19 male, was feeding the cat when I realised I had already experienced the exact moment like it happened months ago in a dream. I've experienced sights like this countless times and I'm wondering what's up. It's always an experience that lasts for, say, about a minute, and I immediately recognise. I'd understand it if my dreams were based on my current situation and in the short-term future, but between the dreams and the situation really unfolding usually is months. I remember vividly dreaming about someone I only knew from the face being on the soccer pitch, with me shooting a ball at the opponent's goal but missing by maybe a metre. Our club plays within a pool of teams within the region, so usually 14 to 16 matches are against teams you play against every year. However, the opponents in this case were wearing uniforms I didn't recognise. I didn't think much of it when that same player and I were scheduled to be on the same team. We did pretty okay and were allowed to continue in the cup when I realised our opponents had the same exact uniform on as the one in my dreams. Sometime in the second half, the situation unfolded completely like I witnessed before. I'm not sure about the paranormal, and I don't even know if this would be the right subreddit. But does anyone know something about this? Or experience something similar? I know it's called deja vu, but I can't find a scientific explanation. It creeps me out sometimes, and it's come to the point where I believe I don't really have a free will, and everything is completely set in stone already.